Hey man, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Welcome to the house.
Thank you very much. You've got a lovely place here.
It's all right. It's a good place for music.
Yeah.
There's a lot of music in here all around. Congratulations on the record.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Just what's the chronology of it?
Well, I started writing music on guitar probably about 5 years ago, and just coming up with riffs and, riff here, riff there. And I was never finishing songs because I'd start to record something and work on it, and finishing a song is actually like time consuming. Like writing riffs is really fun. And then it's like, well, what comes after it? And what's the rest of the song like? That's where you kind of bog down in the process. So as I was bogging down, I would come up with another riff, for another song and record that and riff after riff after riff. And then it dawned on me one day that I was getting nowhere, that I was just playing around and like, okay, so what if I just took the best handful of songs and canceled everything else that I had planned and really just tried to be really dedicated about writing songs. So I did like a 9 to 5 schedule. Like today I'm waking up and writing songs, and just finished them.
Did you have the songs in your head, or was it an arduous process to get there, to finish these tunes?
No, it wasn't arduous, but it was strange for me because I was so inspired and so excited to do it. That I'm used to doing a band, and you've got a new song you're working on or a show you're excited to play, and that's kind of how you get excited about music.
And a lot of it's organized outside of you, right? You have you play a role in whether or not you want to do it, but when there's a big machine behind it, you can just, okay, we're going to do this, guys. But when it's just you, isn't that a very different reality?
Well, it is, yeah. And you don't have to gather a group of guys together and have an excuse to play music. And so what that did was it drove me to play all the time. So I would wake up and, I called it basically everything else that I had to do in my life just life business, like, oh God, I've got to do life business today.
Right,
Clonk,
God.
what a drag. Because I just was so inspired to go in and like, try to work out this, vocal melody that I had in my head all night long and then all morning, and I didn't want to lose it. And so it was, it took over my life for a little while.
Did you, was it a surprise to you that you could feel that way about the process?
No, I don't know. It wasn't really a surprise. More than that, I'd say I was disappointed in myself because I started quite late. I was over 40 by the time I started to, write a rock record that's going to be, basically my work.
Well, you have written on a lot of rock records over the years.
But as a bass player, you're a sideman and you're working on the rhythm section. You might contribute an idea here or there, but it's not, it's different than, basically looking at a blank sheet of paper and saying what should this sheet of paper look like? That's an entirely different thing.
Wow.
So it was more than being surprised by how excited by it I was disappointed in myself for being a lazy bastard and waiting so long.
You gotta let yourself off the hook, Nate. You're in the moment now.
Yeah, well, I was doing some other stuff, but it just took too long.
Now, when you started the riff process, did you think you were going to make a solo record, or were you just messing around in between? Because there was a Foos hiatus, right, of sorts, and then it triggered quickly again. Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of played around with the idea. I had a really a lack of self-confidence about it. So I was even afraid to have the idea be something that I fully embraced within myself, that like, this is what I'm doing. I'm making a record. And that I would tell people that, and then maybe it would turn out poorly, or it just, I wouldn't like it, and I would just toss the idea and be like, oh yeah, nice that you were talking about that for a year and you didn't have anything, to show for it.
Where'd you get encouragement from?
I didn't show anybody anything. No, and I didn't play riffs for anybody or try to gather advice or anything really. What I wanted to do was have something like some demos that were fairly together and that I liked, and then I could show it to an engineer and say, would you help me record this? But I needed it to be to a certain level to do that, just because I was overly just shy about it.
For a lot of people, they know you because of the work of Foo Fighters, others, Sunny Day Real Estate. But I was wondering, when you set out to make a solo record, if you had where you wanted to draw from, because you toured with a straight edge band, you were a hardcore, you have so much experience in so many different kinds of rock and roll. Mm-hmm. these songs, did you know this was the tone that you were going to hit?
No, not at all. So now I'm figuring that out, because now I've done it. I put out a record, I've gone out and I've played some shows, and now I sort of know what the landscape of making music on my own feels and looks like,
right?
And what it's like to create the songs and then play them in front of people. And so now I'm thinking, okay, well, what do I want that to look like? What would the songs be like in order to have the live experience that I want? Because that's really what matters.
True.
The recording is great, but you don't see anybody listening to your music, you know?
And you don't have to live the process. Now I got to play these 8 songs or 12 songs on stage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really where, at least for me, the focus is I want to continue playing shows with Lieutenant, and I want it to look and feel like a certain thing. And so now I'm starting to think about what kind of music to write to have that experience that I want. Prior to that, because again, I was so sheepish about my own skills that it was like, I'm going to just write a song. Hopefully it turns out.
Right.
You know, rather than thinking like, oh, I'd love for it to sound like, you know, Love and Rockets and The Clash mixed together.
Can you imagine?
All right.
Can you imagine?
Maybe that's the direction.
For your next record, you could do that.
Yeah.
I think Love and Rockets are so underrated.
Absolutely.
I normally don't get overly concerned with why a band is called a certain thing, because usually they're named by guys who are 17 to 22 years old.
Yeah.
But when you're in your 40s and you have a band called Lieutenant, the project, what's the reasoning for that name?
Because the police was already taken.
I read once somewhere, though, that Sting's bass playing was an inspiration to you.
Yeah, when I was starting to pick up bass when I was 13 or 14, I was really into Ghost in the Machine.
So then you just were thinking, I can't be called the police, so I'm going to be called another level of police?
Well, I mean, that's a joke. But
yeah, I figured.
There's no real reason behind the name. It's just a name that I liked. Lieutenant is part of a military company. It's a rank. There's a uniform involved with it. There's a duty and a job. And I sort of like all those sort of conformist, faceless elements to the name.
Right.
Because, you know, it was a blanket for me to create a music project under that didn't quite have an identity yet.
Did you not want to put your name on it?
No. If I had it to do over again, I might. But going back to, you know, with Dave and the Foo Fighters, and he made a record on his own. The first Foo Fighters record was just him, and he just scribbled Foo Fighters on the tapes and sent them out to people because he didn't want it to have his name on it. He wanted to have some anonymity that he could grow underneath, you know, and seem like a band. And I like the idea of a band more than a solo project.
Right.
You know, like there's just something just somebody's name on a T-shirt is just less compelling than, you know, The Exploited or something.
Yeah, and the NATE MENDEL band sounds nice, but it could be something else.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like Lieutenant, or as you're wearing a Minutemen shirt.
Yeah.
Which is all right. Were you able to talk to Dave about this? Because he knows what it's like to be in one project and then try to build something under that cloak of anonymity, like you say. Did you talk to him about it?
Only after I was
Dave Krall.
Yeah, only after I was finished.
So he didn't know you were working on it at all.
He may have known I was working on it, but well, actually, I was working on it during on the weekends, in between weekday Foo Fighters writing practices.
Did Hawkins or Shiflett know? Did anybody get let in on the process?
Yeah, well, I started working on it in the summer of 2013, got the basic tracks done, and then got a call from Dave that he was ready. He had songs, and it was time to start working on what would become the Sonic Highways record. So then I had this odd few months where Monday through Friday I'd be in Foo Fighters world working on those songs, and then on Saturday and Sunday I would come in and do overdubs on the Lieutenant record. And at that point in time, everybody knew what was going on because it was, you know, I was clearly like putting down the bass and picking up a guitar.
How comfortable were you with the guitar on that level to become a recording artist with a guitar?
Well, I'm getting confidence with it now. I'm starting to look at it the same way that I look at bass, which is I'm not a schooled bass player, and I always feel like it's sort of a second language for me because I don't understand the mechanics of it, theory and all that kind of thing. But I'm over that now. I've been doing it for so long. It's like I've got a handle on it. I do it my own way.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it, and I'm getting that way with guitar. I haven't taken any lessons or, you know, learned all of Abbey Road or, you know, those steps that you need to take to become, like, you know, a guitar player. But I'm transferring what I know from bass onto it and some of the techniques that I've used through the years on that, and I'm probably going to be the same kind of guitar player I was as a bass player.
Do you think you'd have a better understanding of rhythm then as a guitar player because you've been in a rhythm section for so long?
I have an effed up look at rhythm. And I know that now. I think it works for me. Yeah, it's because I get accused of this all the time in the Foo Fighters, my bandmates, like, what are you doing? You're like, but you know, liking it a lot of the time. Like, you have an odd sense of time. It's interesting, and sometimes it's too odd and it doesn't work, and I've got to try to make it more conventional. But that's the way I see music and the way I like to look at it. And now that I've brought other people in to play these songs live, who are very accomplished musicians, but they a lot of times are sort of scratching their heads and being like, "Can you remind me what that time is, and where's the one? Please, would you direct me to the one, please?"
George Clinton has always said, "You can do 2 to 4 is your business. I need you on the one." So whatever you find.
I got that from Gil Norton, the first producer I ever worked with on that Color and the Shade. He called me and the first drummer, William Goldsmith, the rhythmless section. Because we never recorded at that level before.
Right.
You know, we'd done Sunny Day Real Estate, and we were trying to make, you know, crazy art music, and so making sure that we were on time on the one was not the highest priority.
No,
but he's a producer, and so it's like, and I remember I'm struggling with some bass line, and he said, "Listen, man, I just, you know, on the downbeat, I just need you on the one." Like that, he was going to take everything else. He's just going to have to deal with. And he's like, "This is the situation that I have, and so I'm going to manage my expectations."
Well, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in a musician too when you hear that. Because did you have to go home and practice? Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, as you know, I wasn't alone in that process because we're all fairly scrappy musicians. I mean, Dave was very talented, had been through Nirvana, but he hadn't really worked with a producer on his own record. Pat Smear was, you know, like, it's antithetical to him to work with a producer. And I remember him getting frustrated at one point in time because he was having the same issues of, we were going for this, you know, very, you know, modern rock, regimented kind of thing, pre-Pro Tools. So we were doing it all ourselves. But now you would just, you know, you would grit it and take care of it. But he just, as a joke, he played like the most boring guitar line he could possibly think of.
Smear?
Yeah. You know, and Gil goes, "That's it. You did it." That came out of the control room. It was like, I can't believe that, man. It was a joke, and that's the one he wanted. So everybody was kind of going through that.
Maybe that's why the band seems so tight now. It's that you learned how to do it together.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah,
that's, you know, and we've got a phenomenal drummer, so he's always where he needs to be. So it helps us sound good.
What'd you think of the Sonic Highways experience?
I loved it. It's the coolest thing we ever did as a band. Yeah, absolutely. Hands down. The most fun, the most productive, the most creative, the most interesting. Lyrically, with the way Dave did the lyrics, it's like nothing we'd ever done before, where he was doing storytelling and he's writing based on experiences he's had in his city, getting to hang out in some of these places that we'd only just come through, you know, just on tour stops. You're there for a day, maybe you got a day off,
right? But
you're probably relaxing and maybe going to a museum or something like that. You're not meeting people and going to their houses and exploring and seeing the iconic sites. You know, Jimi Hendrix's grave I never went to. I lived in Seattle.
It's pretty great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
So while you're doing this on the weekends and you're having because it's not like you went into a studio and, you know, and just made a Foo Fighters record, because you had so many different experiences on that one record, the one Foo's record. Could you see how your album started to arc? The Lieutenant album started to take on some of the stuff that the Sonic Highways writing helped?
They were really separate experiences, yeah.
And you were able to compartmentalize them, the both?
Absolutely, while trying to learn lessons everywhere I go. You know, I feel very much like a student, so I'm trying to pick up stuff wherever I go. But they were just such separate jobs. You know, we were making a television series and a Foo Fighters record, which we know how to do, and the songs were already written. So then turning around and trying to figure out which key a song should be in or what the BPM should be on my solo record was like, yeah, that's kind of a different thing.
Did you have a guru that you could call and help you through it?
Toshi Kasai.
Yeah?
Yeah. He'll be playing keyboards with us tonight. Yeah, he was my ally. The record wouldn't have happened without him.
It's good. Great. Did you know that he was going to be that guy in the beginning of the process?
No, I was just hoping for an engineer, and I gave him carte blanche. I said, "Hey man, I'm new to this, and I do want it to sound a certain way. I've got opinions on what it sounds like. I pretty much want it to sound like these demos that I that I created, and I wanted to sound like that, but better. But if I'm struggling with a guitar part, or an easier way to play it, like a different phrasing or a vocal harmony or anything, like, chime in, let me know. It's open season. Don't hold back.
Right.
And he didn't. And a lot of really cool stuff on the record. Those are his ideas, and most of the keyboard playing ended up being him, and so he was hugely helpful.
All right. So let's go through your musical memory now. Tell me about the Hoedown era. Are you a promoter at shows? Was it not Country Hoedown? What was it called?
How do you know that?
What was it called? Something Hoedown, right?
The Hoedown Center.
Yeah, the Hoedown Center.
In Tri-Cities in Eastern Washington State, south of Spokane.
What was that like? I mean, how old are you?
15, 16, 17.
And you were booking shows?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We love, in love with punk rock in the 80s, hardcore, and reading Maximum Rock and Roll, and sending $3 out in the mail to get EPs and stuff that so many people of my generation did.
I did from here, Maximum Rock and Roll and Punk Planet. I was always trying to stack as many of those in my house as I could.
Yeah, so
I love that stuff.
But we were out in a small town, and so there was no established, and we were, of course, a few, by the time we discovered, hardcore in like 84 or something like that, it was really already starting to become a thing that was just, a shadow of its former self. Right. But we didn't know that.
Well, DC and New York were they were everything. To us, they were mythical. Those cities.
Of course, yeah.
For hardcore.
Yeah. Even DC Space, which is not even the 930 Club. When I went there and ended up playing there on this band I was in called Christ on a Crutch, it was legendary to me because I'd see the flyers, and there was like Soul Side at DC Space. I'm like, oh my God. Was
Christ on the Crutch pre or post the straight edge thing?
That was okay. So this is what happened. I was in this small town where I set up shows at the Hoedown Center and a couple other places, and then moved from there to Seattle to go to University of Washington and start Christ on a Crutch. Not start, but join. They were an East Coast band. They were from DC. They put out a record out there, and then a couple of the guys came over to Seattle, and we were going to reform the band with me and another guy in it. Yeah. So that was
what year was that?
Like 1988.
88.
Yeah.
Now, which was you were on a Sub Pop? Oh, was it a Sunny Day, the Sub Pop record? You were on a record that was Sub Pop's second highest selling record of all time, right behind Bleach, I think.
Maybe for a moment.
Yeah.
The Diary, yeah. I'm sure it's not it doesn't rank there now, but yeah.
But you had that moment. So did you think your career was, okay, this is what I do now. This is my life. Because I'm sure at that point, not only were the Foo Fighters not real, Nirvana wasn't even, in 88, Nirvana, no one thought they were going to be a world beater either. So, and no one thought Seattle was a world beater at that time. Mm-hmm. So did you have a concept of what your career was going to be or what you wanted it to be?
No, just because I was too young and I didn't have perspective on it. When Sunny Day started we got our rent paid by Sub Pop, I remember, in like 1994. I was making $500 a month, and I just graduated from college, and my plan was to be a journalist, because up until that point, I didn't think there was a possibility to make my living doing music. So I'm going to go be a journalist. I'm interested in politics. I think it'd be good to maybe be some kind of like modern day muckraking journalist. That sounds cool.
No, but you used to read Harper's, right? So I don't think you'd be a muckraker. That wouldn't be your thing, right?
You're right. That's where my head was at, and I had this little pact with myself. I said, okay, well, I've got two ways to go. I can continue and try to be a journalist, or I can go do this Sunny Day real estate thing, go on the road, and when it inevitably implodes in a year or two, I just want to save $10,000 so I can go back and get my master's degree.
Right.
That was my plan.
Did you save the 10 grand?
Yes.
But you didn't go back to get your master's, did you?
No, because then Foo Fighters happened.
Right around that time.
Yeah.
So it was a girl.
Well, after that. So I toured for about a year and a half, did like a year of touring for the Diary record that Sunny Day Real Estate did, and then we recorded with the Pink album and didn't do any touring for that. That was late 94, and that band imploded, and about 3 weeks later, I tried out, me and William Goldsmith, the drummer from Sunny Day Real Estate, both tried out for Foo Fighters.
But you got the Foo Fighters gig and still had to play a Sunny Day show, didn't you? Because there's no, I thought there was one moment where on stage, there was a lot of tension on stage, and you walked off, and there was something to do with you trying or whatever, like near the end of Sunny Day.
No, there was tension on stage because that's really uncomfortable to talk about. I want to be careful because I know Jeremy was a singer for that band, and he was going through a rough period of time, and he had a religious conversion. It was his way of kind of dealing with the issues he was having in his personal life at that time. And he was born again, so he had a lot of zeal for it. And we would finish our Sunny Day set, and we're all atheists and liberal people, and young and opinionated, and so that the God thing was not happening for us. And he would end the song, rather than like AC/DC with just like hitting an A and a drum, and a drum roll, he would go into like some kind of religious chant thing.
That's such an interesting experience.
And it was tough for the rest of us. It was tough for him at the time, because clearly he was going through something, but it was hard. And so then William and I would start making noise to try to cover it up because we were embarrassed, and it was just a disaster. But that was, in October, November, December of 1994, and then Foo Fighters started in January of '95.
So that's a very different experience than to walk into Foo Fighters. Were you a Nirvana fan?
I was, yeah. Mm-hmm. Later, I was a later Nirvana fan. I had kind of I was a bit uptight about the grunge stuff because I was doing all ages shows, and that was based in bars, and it seemed like they were trying, like the band, to me it was like they're just trying to be Led Zeppelin. It's just a sloppy Led Zeppelin. Well, we're making cool music here. It's all ages and all that kind of thing. Just overly self-righteous. But I did discover the Bleach record and had to, give it up for that album because it was so good. And then everybody, it was like a football team. When the Nirvana album blew up, everybody was rooting for it. Almost everyone in town already had the cassette tape. They were floating around, and we were in love with it. And then just watching it climb the charts, it was like your football team, and then where the whole city gets behind it. Right. It could have been the Seahawks.
And was it like that for all those teams? Because there were so many bands that came out in that one moment.
Well, no, because Nirvana did it first and biggest. Yeah. And after that, it was like, and then the pressure was on, and bands were moving to town to try to make it happen. And Sunny Day got approached to be a token grunge band in a Nordstrom's, which is a mall in the U.S. I don't know if they're up here, but in a Nordstrom, at least. So that kind of thing was happening, and so you were navigating that and not paying so much attention to like the fact that like, oh, okay, this other band's blowing up now.
So Nate, if you look at you've lived this huge experience, and I've only heard the record a couple times because I just got the link sent to me, and I like it a lot. But can you hear your journey in the lyrics, or not just that you wanted to make the record, but were the things you wanted to say about the last 20 odd years in your life in this?
Yeah, I haven't dived into that, which is good because I'm going to need to write more lyrics in the future. So
you're gonna have to draw from something.
I need a barrel somewhere to draw from.
So where'd they come from then? These ones.
I always thought that I would write about. I'm a gigantic Talking Heads fan, and I like his angle to writing lyrics, which is a little bit of everything, and sort of we're all in this life together, and we're all sort of strangers to it, and we're figuring it out as we go. And he just looks at the world with those big David Byrne eyes, and comments on it. Like more songs about buildings and food, right. Like that. I like that kind of world,
He seems to have won. Like David Byrne seems to have the right life, at least on the surface. He does cool stuff. He doesn't seem to care.
Except for that Talking Heads reunion, which should happen. I don't care if they don't get along.
Sunny Day reunion. I mean,
we got along.
Yeah.
Though.
Did you?
Yeah. Mostly.
Was there worry about it leading up to it? Was the prayer thing still happening on stage at that point?
No. That's why I'm careful about what I say, because we talked about it a lot. We needed to do interviews, and that got brought up, and
sure.
So I got Jeremy's perspective on it. So I'm very careful about what I say there. But that was a great experience. It led us. We had so much fun, and it was so just successful personally for us to go out and play those songs again that we tried to make another record. That was not quite so successful.
No, were the songs not there?
Songs were there. You'd think that would be the problem. There was great. We wrote together the way we used to, and the result was maybe almost as good, which is saying a lot because I think those records are good. But it's been a while since we've been a working band, and there's a lot that you need to do to put a record together. A lot of patience, and that just didn't happen. Didn't come together.
It didn't need to happen, right?
Didn't need to happen.
And there's always tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now that you're a solo artist as well, which is cool. You have so many different experiences. When you were meeting all the people that you met in the Sonic Highways thing, could you draw on any of those? Like, were you looking at any of those? I remember specifically the episode with Buddy, first one. Same Buddy guy talking about what his upbringing was like and where he picked up some of the lyrics. I thought that's interesting. For me, just watching it as a fan, I wondered what a musician listening to him say that stuff would draw from it.
Well, I mean, with him in particular, you're just drawn to his story. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with my life. I didn't, migrate up from the South with not a penny to my name and meet one of my heroes and have him get taken under his wing and become a blues legend. So like,
it's still time. There's still time.
Yeah, right.
It could happen.
So that was, that there's nothing for me to really take from that aside from just like experiencing it the way anybody else that sees Sonic Highways would, where it's like, wow, he's an incredible artist. I'm reminded of that now. Right.
But as a guy who writes from the observational point of view, like looking at the world, like you said.
But I didn't. That's why I didn't get to finish my thought earlier, is that I didn't end up writing like that.
Oh, you didn't do
like
that?
That,
okay.
That would be more like social commentary and like sort of less about me. And what I feel about things. And I was going through a really, and this is so cliche that I didn't want to write lyrics like this, and I feel horrible even talking about it, but you got to write what you know, and you got to write what's, going to make a visceral impact with you at the time. And it was about a relationship and about a period, a kind of crossroads in my life with that, both with this woman and both how I felt about being in a union in general, and some of the perils of that and some of the joys of that and some of the the confluence of those two things. And that's what I ended up writing the bulk of the lyrics about.
Do you listen back to it, or when you sing them live, because it's still a new experience, are you feeling the things you felt?
Nope. But well, no, it's not. It's not actually. I've had one moment where it was actually a sound check, not even a show, where I was playing one of the songs, and I felt the lyrics and I felt the song enough to where it created a reaction in me, like an emotional reaction. And I would like to have that happen more often. But we're it's so new, like I've played with these guys a handful of times and sung in front of an audience a handful of times that, I'd like to say that, like, oh, absolutely, there's some experience where it all comes together, and like finally these lyrics are, sailing through a room and reacting to people's ears, and that makes sense to me, and that's powerful. But it's not yet, because so much of my brain is given over to just the mechanics of doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm getting there, and what I want to do is I want to shut off that part of my brain and just play from the heart.
Who are you most nervous to share that with, this record?
Who was I most nervous to share it with? Probably my bandmates. Yeah, I think, it's a pretty harsh room.
Like the Lieutenant Band or
No,
Foo Fighters?
my Foo Fighters bandmates. Yeah. I mean, I know that we're like brothers, so you always have that backstop of knowing that the guys care. We care about one another, but in the process of caring about one another, we're gonna sling a lot of garbage.
Right. So did you sit and play it to them, or did you just email them tracks and not be in the room?
They just I sat Taylor in a car and played him a couple of tracks. A couple things got put out online, and the guys found it themselves. I actually still haven't. I don't own the record yet myself, so I'll get some copies and give them.
You should. I'm gonna have a link. I can send you the link.
Yeah.
When was the first time your musical growing up, where first time you had to change your opinion of a sound? When you're young and this is the kind of music I like, and this is what I'm into. I'm part of this club, and then suddenly your mind is open, and you like something you didn't think you would.
I feel like, I don't know. Even though there was 10 years of my life where I was so focused on really, really heavy music, I was always kind of pretty open-minded. Like Graceland was one of my favorite records when, it was all hardcore all the time. So there wasn't too many moments like that. I think looking back on it, it was probably something similar to what you're talking about happened in 1993 when I went on tour with this hardcore band, Christ on a Crutch, in Europe. And I'd never been to Europe before. It was wintertime. I had an idea in my head of what the tour was going to be like, and it was going to be magical, and it was not. And I got really depressed over there. I was lack of sleep. I didn't know what jet lag was, so I didn't understand. Like, why am I up in the middle of the night? It's just so green, and so my life kind of collapsed. My musical life's collapsed. I'm staying in squats. You know, there's all these just dirty punk rockers there, and it wasn't for me.
Right.
And I had that moment, and I had to go through a really rough. It was like a 6-week tour too. It just went on forever and ever and ever. A really rough period of depression and reorientation, and that's how I kind of flushed that out of my system, and got home and took Sunny Day Real Estate really seriously, and wanted to become a better musician and do music that didn't involve so much anger and screaming.
Right.
And there was that moment.
First female artist that you identified with and really connected to.
Maybe just the first thing that comes to my head is PJ Harvey, but I don't know if there's like a big connection there. I'm trying to think. All of my favorite bands they maybe have a female in the band, but I can't think of one that's fronted by a woman. Right. It's not a lot of rock and roll bands that are fronted by women, you know?
That's why I ask. I always wonder, it's such a male dominated, we know there are women who play, but I always find, who's the, like, from you, Sinead. Like, I like Janis Joplin, obviously, but that was from a previous generation. And then when I heard Sinead O'Connor, and I was probably 17, I thought because she looked super punk rock, and I thought it was interesting. What was the first rap artist or hip hop artist that you really liked?
Never been a big hip hop fan. I heard Roots Manuva, which is an English band. I like the poppier ones. You know, like they're more poppy. Like, you know, like really harder hip hop is never really connected with me. But if there's, if there's more going on musically rather than just the beat and the lyric, then that'll draw me in. Like, I like Roots Manuva. I think they're great.
Which Lieutenant's song do you get most excited to play?
There's a song, Lift the Sheet, which we have not correctly played yet. It's really, I was talking about that odd time thing, right. And you know, my drummer, who's like a drum machine, he's so good. He's a studio guy, really, and it wraps his head in circles. Like he has a tough time. We all do. I don't want to put it on him. And then I get out of time playing it because the other guy, you know, it's a soup. But when it comes together, it's the most powerful song that we do. So it's this really tricky beast of like, oh God, are we going to get it tonight? And then there's moments where it comes together and it's so good. So it's the best and worst song that we play live. All
right, we'll play that one for sure. And how do you flush out your set list? Like, how many songs are you going to play?
Well, we add one cover. We do a Dead Kennedys cover, and the 8 songs on the record, and then one more.
It's a 10-song show.
Yeah, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, but they're rambling songs. It goes on for a while. Yeah.
Is the one more song, is that a variable? Does that change all the time? Or is it a surprise? We don't want to ruin it.
No. I mean, I wish it was a surprise. I wish we had, a tank of songs to choose from. But because we had 3 days rehearsal before going on this tour. So we learned one cover, and then that was it. Out.
Which Dead Kennedys?
Moon Over Marin.
Let's play it.
All right.
Nate. What a pleasure to see you, man.
Yeah. Nice talking to you.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.